So what is going on, everyone? Fernando Silva here with another video, and this morning I saw that ByteReview actually released a video on how to get the most out of your iPad. So obviously what we have to do is react to that because I love ByteReview's channel. Super aesthetic, super calming as well. He's one of those channels where you can kind of just play it in the background and just let it play in the background in a loop forever. But without further ado, let's see what ByteReview's got. I kind of want to see how he uses his iPad because I know that he's a former teacher, and then now he's a freelancer, does a lot of video work, YouTube work, things like that. So I'm curious to see just exactly what he uses his iPad Pro for. But without further ado, let's get into it. Alright everybody, so let's get right into this video. So we're going to just hop into ByteReview's latest video. He released it this morning actually, and I'm just really curious to see what it's about. So if we go, I've been subbed to ByteReview. I want to say the video that I saw from him, definitely one of his most popular, was his IKEA desk setup tour, which was this one, the 3-year-old one. So ByteReview setup tour 2018, ultimate IKEA desk. That was the video where I found ByteReview, and ever since then I've kind of just been following his journey, seeing what he's been doing. And now he's really been focused on iPad Airs. The iPad Air 4 is, I think, his main iPad right now, where he just got the M1 iPad Pro to test it out as well. And I'm just curious to see what he's got going on with this video. And let's just take a second, everybody, to really appreciate these thumbnails. I mean, look at these things, right? They're just, I would print some of these out and just put them on the wall, just like Canoopsies. Some of these are so nice, right? And he's a former teacher, like I mentioned, so he does a lot with note-taking applications and stuff like that. So if you guys need some iPad stuff around that, by all means, his link in this video will be the first link in the description. But without further ado, how to get the most from your iPad. Let's see what he's got.
Something I hear a lot is, I just bought an iPad but I don't really use it much, or I've got an iPad and I just use it to watch Netflix and YouTube.
Also, he's got to be one of the few people that can pull off a beanie and pull it off correctly. I would never be able to pull off a beanie.
Or why would I use an iPad when my laptop is way better? And I totally hear you. When I first picked up an iPad Pro in 2018, I had all the intention of using it as a creative tool, but I ended up falling back to my laptop all of the time. Since then...
So that's definitely a big question, where in a big kind of spot, especially now with iPad Pros being priced honestly more expensively than a base level, entry level MacBook Air, I still try to recommend, for most people, the MacBook Air just makes sense. MacBook Air just makes sense. There's a much smaller learning curve. If you're used to Mac OS or even Windows, it's easier to just pick up, open up, and go. It has a keyboard and the trackpad built in. Yeah, it's not touchscreen, but for a computer, it does everything that you would need a computer to do. Versus on the iPad, you can do most of the stuff. I would say 99.9% of things that you can do on a desktop class, operating system, you can do on the iPad. It's just a matter of, it might take a little bit longer. There's a new way to do that, so there is a bigger learning curve because it's a different OS, right? So again, most of my recommendations go towards MacBook Air, but again, and I've tweeted this before, if you really like something, you'll learn how to use it, and I think that's my story with the iPad.
So I've slowly but surely built up my iPad usage, and thanks to some big updates from Apple, I've started using my iPad way more than I ever did before. And today I wanted to share with you my tips on how to get the absolute most out of your iPad.
I don't know why, but that was so cool. I love that. I love when people do that when they start speaking and the words come on the screen.
Before we get started though, YouTube loves to keep reminding me that only 12% of you are subscribed to the channel.
Same.
So if you do like aesthetic tech videos and iPad content, I've got loads of that here, so be sure to subscribe and join the community. Anyway, let's get right into it.
Also, excuse the mess, we're moving.
To set the scene of this video, I wanted to start off by saying an iPad isn't a laptop and a laptop isn't an iPad. They're two different computing devices with some crossover in the middle, and as soon as you stop comparing the two, the more sense you can make of iPad workflows, and it will help you figure out the best way to use it. This will be different for everyone, of course, but as soon as I started doing this, I used the iPad much more than I ever did before. A good example of this for me was moving all of my note-taking over to the iPad rather than using my laptop or PC. Sure, I can do that on a laptop, but the experience for me is much better on the iPad, and I get much richer, fully featured notes from it.
I 1,000,000% agree. Even for me, somebody that just uses a classic Apple Notes, I just prefer to grab my Apple Pencil, or I even prefer to type out my notes on my iPad on the Magic Keyboard than I do on a laptop, and obviously than regular pencil and paper.
You might have to find the right app for you, but more than anything, I encourage you to lean into what an iPad can do better than a laptop, rather than trying to replace the laptop with something that it already excels at. Let's talk about accessories, because in my opinion it's going to be difficult to get the most out of an iPad without a couple of these. First off,
Before he goes, my main accessories are going to be, I guess it also depends who you are, but Apple Pencil if you're a designer of any kind or you want to go straight paperless, Apple Pencil, obviously. Magic Keyboard if you're willing to spend the money on it. If not, there's other alternatives out there, but for the trackpad experience, if this is going to be your only computer, you got to get a Magic Keyboard. And then Paperlike screen protector, I have like a Bataka case on here as well, just to protect the side rails, if you guys can see. So at least this protects the side rails, and it's kind of nice. It's still very thin, it still works with the Magic Keyboard. So I guess those would be it, and then get yourself a nice like $30 to $50 USB-C hub. The reason I say $30 to $50 is because those last a little bit longer, because you can get some for like 15, 18, 20 bucks. But if you spend at least 30, then you're kind of at least going to get a year's worth out of that USB-C hub.
I think the really essential tool for the iPad is the Apple Pencil. This is what really separates it from other computing devices out there and opens up new ways of interaction with the iPad.
It's true, unless you have like one of those Weibo pads, I think they're called, which is like literally meant to get pencil input onto a computer. The Apple Pencil is like the only other stylus that has this type of precision, I guess is the word to use, right? Like this Apple Pencil has zero competition in the market.
If you're planning on taking notes, editing photos, or becoming a fully fledged digital artist, then the Pencil is an absolute must-have. Not only is it fantastically responsive and as close as you can get to pen and paper in the digital world, but it's also super intuitive. The Pencil snaps to the side for pairing, charging, and storage, and it couldn't be more ideal. Secondly, a lot of people will benefit from a keyboard, and the good part here is you can go to any level you like. Apple sell the super high-end Magic Keyboard, which has a trackpad built in, which is great, but there's a plethora of other options out there, so you really don't have to spend much to grab one. My favourite though is the classic Apple Smart Keyboard Folio, which folds away nicely so you can still use the iPad as a tablet.
So I did slap that Slim Folio keyboard on the 11-inch iPad Pro that we have. And I'll be honest, I kind of miss it. Like I remember when my 12.9-inch iPad Pro had the Slim Folio case, and I remember just how easy it was to like, pop it open, type whatever I needed to, but then when I needed to note take, just fold it backwards and then put it right on the table and start note taking. So it just worked a little bit better. Yes, like the Magic Keyboard is amazing, and it's a much better keyboard, a much better computer experience. But if you want your iPad to be super versatile, you're using your Apple Pencil all the time, you're using it like in writing mode a lot, then maybe the Slim Folio is a better decision and a better product accessory for you.
Still. But a solid setup I did use for a good while was the much cheaper Logitech Keys to Go, which is a great, crazy slim rechargeable keyboard that connects through Bluetooth.
So cheap too.
Using this
They
with
work really
stand
well.
worked for me for a long time before I invested in the Keyboard Folio. You can obviously go even lower than that though if you want to. Pretty much any Bluetooth keyboard will work, or you could even go full enthusiast and connect up a mechanical keyboard for the ultimate over-the-top experience.
I think that's the Moff stand. We have one of those. They're nice.
A keyboard is generally a great addition if you're looking to do more classical computing tasks on your iPad, like typing up Word documents, browsing the internet, or just chatting. Thirdly, and the final essential in my eyes, is a USB-C adapter. Now that most
It's like we're the same person, right? What did I say? Apple Pencil, a keyboard of sorts, and then a USB-C hub.
iPads are using USB-C, it's worth taking advantage of it with a decent adapter. There's about 1 million out there to choose from, and depending on what you need, you can get one that's going to work for you best. Personally, I've used the Kingston Nucleum one for a really long time, which is pretty solid, and I mainly use it for that SD card reader so I can import all of my photos and videos.
Also, if you guys see that pegboard behind him, he has a video on how he created that pegboard, and I'm 1,000,000% going to mimic it once we move.
To the iPad. Moving on from there, there's some really good paid apps which I think you should check out. Just like any computer, the best apps are often locked behind a paywall, and the iPad is no different. I really recommend you take a look at some of the more professional apps out there if you really want to unlock the potential of the iPad. My favourite examples of this are LumaFusion, which is a fully fledged video editor which can...
And LumaFusion just got their 3.0 update, so they just added a stabilizer in there, which is freaking amazing. I played with it the other day. It's amazing what it does, right? I think technically all it does is like zoom in a little bit, and I guess in layman terms it turns into like a gimbal. but it stabilizes the crap out of it. And then also external SSD, so you no longer have to have like a bunch of redundant files of the same actual project that you're working on your iPad Pro. Like right now, LumaFusion takes up like 9/10 of my storage on my iPad Pro.
Handle 4K footage no problem, and is probably going to be the best video editor on iPad for a long time, unless Apple decides to put Final Cut on here, which isn't likely. Another one is Adobe Lightroom, which has been my favorite app on the iPad for a really long time because it makes editing photos so easy and intuitive, and interacting with them on a touchscreen just feels like the right place to do it. GoodNotes 5 is my personal choice for taking notes on the iPad. It's a wonderful app that really brings a sense of physicality to digital note-taking, and it's always being updated with new features, which is really nice. And finally, Procreate is a massive go-to for many digital artists out there. It's simple to use, yet has layers and layers of complexity if you really want to get into it.
Yeah, that's like a step above me. Like as far as I go LumaFusion. I just started dabbling in Affinity Photo, which I guess is the Photoshop equivalent for the iPad Pro, and Affinity Photo works great, and I've just scratched the surface of what it can do. But outside of that, I use a regular Photos app, so like instead of Lightroom, I use the regular Photos app, honestly, to change all the color settings and color corrections and things like that. But I'm kind of simple that way. But again, like he's probably using these tools and using them exceptionally well.
Now I know there's often a feeling that if an app is over 99p, then it's too much, especially with many apps becoming freemium. But if you can put that aside, have a browse of the App Store and dive into some of these more premium apps, and you'll soon realize there's so much more you can actually do with the iPad. That leads me on to another point I feel really strongly about. You should use the iPad for note-taking. Combined with the Apple Pencil, it's one of the finest things the iPad does. The built-in Apple Notes app is a fantastic starting place and is probably enough for most people, but it's really worth looking at a paid app if you take a huge amount of notes or if you're looking for a better experience. I actually made an entire video about the best note-taking app, so I'll link that in the description, but there's a really good selection of free and paid apps out there that can skyrocket your note-taking experience. This is also another point where the Apple Pencil comes in clutch. I've always preferred to handwrite my notes rather than type them, and the Apple Pencil makes that experience the closest to pen and paper it can be. If you haven't already, you should try connecting a controller to the iPad and experience some genuine gaming on here.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen, my last video was about gaming on the iPad Pro, and then he made one, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. Basically, the iPad Pro is a gaming console, and it's just being kind of weighed down by what the App Store can bring, or like what developers want to do, because it can't be that hard to port over a full AAA game. But then there's also cloud gaming, there's Apple Arcade. So I don't know, the iPad Pro in like 2 or 3 years will probably be my only console. Like, I skipped this generation of consoles. I do not have a PS5 or an Xbox One X or whatever it's called. I only have a PS4 and the Xbox One S.
I've really enjoyed doing this for a long time, and with services like Google Stadia, GeForce Now, Xbox xCloud, you can even play console level titles on the iPad. My personal favourite way to play these games though are the ones that are solely based on the iPad. There's a huge amount of power under the hood of these tablets, and there's some really awesome games that show it off really well. A few examples of some of the exceptional titles I've played are Sayonara Wild Hearts, Genshin Impact, The Pathless, and Hyperlight Drifter. Now obviously I don't want this video to turn into a hey, you should just spend more money on your iPad for it to be good, but I also really think it's worth giving Apple Arcade a go.
I 1,000,000% agree. Like I said in my last video, just with NBA 2K, I will pay $5 a month.
Of the titles
And they consistently update it. Like, you would think Apple would drop a game into Apple Arcade, and since there's no more money to be made off of that app itself, you think they wouldn't update it as much. But NBA 2K started off with version 1.0, and now it's on version 1.2.0, which is nice. So they've gone through like 4 or 5 different updates already.
Enjoyed the most have come from here, and I can't explain how nice it is to be free of microtransactions and heavy upfront costs when you want to try out a new game. And not to mention, there's some really nice little exclusives on there too. As a bonus, if you already have a PS4 or Xbox One in the house, then those controllers will connect to the iPads no problem at all, and you can start gaming.
PS5 controller support will come with iPadOS 15, and supposedly Rumble Pack support, because right now these controllers don't rumble when you play on an iPad.
Straight away. If you don't, then I really like this controller from 8BitDo. It's a retro SNES inspired one that's great for shorter bursts of play. Another thing I hear a lot of is the general distaste of iPadOS as, well, an OS. And a lot of it is totally valid. I would agree that the file system is nothing on Finder or Windows Explorer. It's missing like really little features like copy times and progress bars when moving around files.
So those things, a progress bar is coming to iPadOS 15, but it's still not like in your face. When you transfer files on a Mac, like the moment you drop that file into another folder or something like that, if it doesn't transfer immediately, then you get a progress bar to let you know when it's going to be done. With iPadOS 15, you'll be able to see a little circle, a little dial, and then click on that dial to then tell you how long it's going to take. So again, yeah, like the file system I think is one of the biggest deterrents with iPadOS 15, or with just iPads in general. So maybe we'll make a video kind of discussing how I have my file management, because there's a lot of cloud storage that I use as well.
But there's also some really great features of iPadOS that work really nicely. Getting to grips with multitasking is something that's been totally worth it for me, and I think a lot of people forget it's even a thing. Most apps are capable of being run side by side, which is the obvious one, but slide over is also well worth getting into. This allows you to have apps open in a small floating window on the side of the iPad, which you can pull and push in with a simple swipe. I find the best apps to put in here are small ones, so things like Twitter, Spotify, and to-do lists. Oh, and one of my favorite tips for iPadOS is if you don't have a keyboard attached, you can pinch on the keyboard to get the little keyboard.
Yeah.
This will give your apps much more.
And then you can also use the swipe gestures, which I use on the iPhone. When you have the large virtual keyboard, you can't swipe gesture, but with the small one, you can.
Room to fill out the screen, and it should make typing even quicker as it's the same size as the iPhone's one. You can even move it around too, which is pretty ideal. There's also a host of new features on the way from iPadOS 15 too, like universal control, a better multitasking experience, and a bigger build out of widgets. So that's worth keeping an eye on too. Finally, if you do find yourself working on a laptop or a PC all day, then an iPad is still a great companion for those devices. Now that a lot of us are working from home, you can use the iPad as a second screen through Sidecar on the Mac or through Duet Display on Windows. I'll still use it for taking notes on the side of a laptop or for keeping a client brief open while I work on a video or photography project.
Yeah, so during meetings, like my use case kind of like this is like if we're in a Zoom call or a Google Hangout meeting or something like that, then I'll literally do the same thing. I'll grab my iPad, put it next to me while I'm on my computer video chatting, and then note take. That's exactly what I do.
There's plenty of ways to find utility for it too. If you're on the newer M1 iPad Pro.
And he has a great point. Like the iPad, any iPad, like iPad Air, iPad Pro, they're great supplemental devices as well to Mac OS because of Sidecar, and then hopefully universal control kind of wows us and takes Sidecar to the next level.
Then center stage for video calls is an awesome feature to have if you're moving around a lot, or if your webcam quality is just really poor and you want to keep using your laptop while you're on the call with no interruptions. Then obviously the iPad can do that too. So there's all the ways I personally get the most from my iPad, but it is worth keeping in mind that we're all different and we all have different ways of working. So while I recommend you give some of these tips a go, they might not work exactly as they do for you as they do for me. There's also so many other things the iPad can do that I haven't mentioned here. Some people have really good productivity hacks with shortcuts, and some people make use of totally different app sets to get stuff.
I was talking to Steven Robles about that. Like, he's huge into the shortcut game. I don't do anything with shortcuts, but apparently, like, the shortcut ecosystem is crazy.
Done on their iPad. For me, though, this is it. I hope you found it useful and enjoyed the video. If you did, pop a like on the way out. That would be massive, and I will see you all in the next one.
Boom. Pop the like on the way out. But yeah, that's ByteReview. If you guys have never seen it before, like I said, I'm going to first link in the description of this video and his channel. He's the man. He's very aesthetic when it comes to his product reviews. He's very Apple focused. iPad Air, M1 iPad Pro. He's got a lot of cool desk setups from IKEA, so like cheap budget ones that still make it look super premium and stuff like that. So I just dig the aesthetic. I love his videos, and I've been following for a year, maybe a little bit over a year. Like I remember I found that older video, watched it, didn't come back for a while, then found him again with another IKEA video, and then ever since then is kind of what I've been watching. But shout out to ByteReview for doing this video. This was awesome. I love reacting to these, so if you guys have any other videos that you want me to react to, ideally iPad focused, comment them below because I'd be more than happy to. I love doing these maybe like once a week, once every other week. They're fun to kind of engage with everybody. But that's going to do it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and until next time.